Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Yes, thank you for joining us on Ask Rob and Rob, a show all about questions and answers, and a show where we make no attempt to be impartial whatsoever. Normally, it's strictly one question per person, but today, Rob, we've got Stephen from the wonderful town of Watford. Can't think why I like Watford so much. And he's got two questions for us, so we had to let him have both. So we'll be hearing those in just a sec, but first, if you've got a question of your own, just one mind, unless you're from Watford, here's how you ask it.
Yes, it's super simple. Even if you're from Watford, you can call 013 808 0035, or you can go to thepropertyhub.net/ask. Of course, I'm only joking. Lovely people of Watford, and lovely Stephen, who's provided us two questions.
Hi, it's Stephen Moxon from Watford. Thank you firstly for your podcasts. Thanks to them, you've inspired me to my first purchase a few months ago, and I'm now planning on buying properties 2 and 3 later this year. I'm actually going to ask two questions. I'm going to be a bit cheeky. Firstly, how do modern method of auctions work? I mean, I've seen them listed on Rightmove all the time, but it says that people can bid right up until the contract exchange. And to me, it seems like it's a bit of a waste of time and money, as it seems to encourage gazumping and a way for agents to make money on holding fees, especially if you've got solicitors doing searches, brokers applying for mortgages. It seems like a lot of wasted time.
All right, so the modern method of auction. It is something that you're seeing cropping up more and more, and it is a bit weird because it's got the word auction in it, but is sort of an auction and sort of isn't, and is different in some very, very important ways. So the way in which the modern method is like a regular auction is that the property is marketed for a certain period of time, people make bids within that period of time, and then at the end, the highest bid wins. But really, that's where the similarity ends. There are a few differences, but the most important one is this. At a normal auction, at the point at which the hammer falls, you are committed to buying the property. You have to put down your deposit there and then you must complete within a certain period of time, often 28 days, sometimes less. So at that point, you've got the security, neither side can pull out, and it's all done and dusted. The modern method is also known as a conditional auction, which means that there are timescales involved, but you don't have to put down the full deposit straight away, and the vendor can actually pull out. So what normally happens is that if you've made the winning bid, you have to put down a reservation fee. Then you normally get about a month to exchange and then a further month to complete. That reservation fee does not form part of the deposit though. That just goes to the agent. So why as a buyer might this method be beneficial to you? I'm struggling to think of any reasons, to be honest. The way that it's marketed is that it's more straightforward than a normal purchase, and in a sort of way it is, because there's a strict time frame, then you get to the end and highest bid wins. So it could be seen as a bit more straightforward. The other advantage is that because the timescale isn't as strict as a normal auction, and you're not actually committing to a timescale that's set in stone the moment the hammer falls, you could buy with a mortgage, whereas at a regular auction you're unlikely to be able to arrange a mortgage in time. But really, the majority of the benefits here are for the vendor and for the agent. The way it works for the vendor is normally they don't have to pay anything at all. Normally, when you're selling your house, you're the one who has to pay the agent's fees. With the modern method, either they pay nothing or they just pay a few £100s and that's it. That's because the agent is getting paid by the buyer, that's you, and their fee is far bigger than for a normal sale. So typically for a sale, an agent will get about 1% or so, and it'll be paid by the seller. For the modern method, I've seen 2.5%, and I've seen fixed fees of a few £1,000s, which for very cheap properties could be an even higher percentage of the sale price. So you can see why agents like it. It's a really easy sell for them to make to their vendors, because you say, well, the buyer's going to pay everything, and they end up getting paid more, and they probably don't have to do as much work. So I think this is why you're seeing this becoming more popular. It's not because it's something that's popular with buyers, it's because it's something that works out very nicely for agents. And I think it's also the reason why you tend to see it more for cheaper kind of properties. Because if you think about it, if you're getting 1% for selling a £50,000 house, you're only making about £500, and the economics of it just don't work out for an agent. But if you can win more instructions by passing the fee to the buyer and making that fee 5 times as much, you can see why they prefer it. So I hope that explains what it is. It's not something that I would seek out, but it's also not something that I would necessarily avoid. If you see the perfect property that's for sale using that method, that's okay, but just be aware that you are going to be the one bearing the fee, so make sure you factor that into your calculations. If it's still a good deal and you're still happy with the total price by the time you've paid that fee, then go for it.
So Stephen, normally that would be your lot. Loads of knowledge dropped on you there, and you'd be on your merry way. But as you're from Watford, and Rob D insisted, you get a second question. So let's listen to it.
A second question is, I'm challenging your view on fundamentals, actually. I've been assessing rental demand using Rightmove and comparing properties that let in an area against ones that have been let agreed. I've noticed that there's certain suburb areas which wouldn't necessarily be considered fundamental hotspots that seem to rent really well despite being a little bit more rural. For example, Arnold in Nottingham. Isn't rental demand ultimately what it's all about, or am I missing something? It would be great to hear your thoughts on both questions.
Stephen dropping the F-bomb on the podcast. Love it. Fundamentals. Okay, so you want to challenge our views on fundamentals. It's a good job you're from Watford, Stephen. Otherwise, you'd be in trouble. But it's okay, because you're not really challenging our view of fundamentals. You're helping us explain something. Because good fundamentals doesn't mean city centre property. Of course, nearly all city centres have good or great fundamentals. And for those who don't know what fundamentals are, it's things like shops, schools, transport links, major employers, major investment, all those things that are going to result in high rental demand and then subsequently, hopefully, capital growth. So you've referenced the area of Arnold, which is not in Nottingham city centre. It's outside the city centre. So what's going on? How have you got rental demand there? Well, it's because Arnold has fundamentals as well, and many other places outside city centres do. And that's the key here. It doesn't have to be city centre. So let's take Arnold as a case point. So off a very quick bit of research, and this is not an endorsement into this area, but I can see a major shopping centre with major supermarkets. I can see Asda there. I can see industrial estates, more than one. I can see there's an A road directly linking into Nottingham, and when I do a search I can see you can drive into Nottingham city centre in only 15 minutes, which is great. I can see business parks, and I can see Nottingham City Hospitals down the road as well, which is a huge employer and obviously will be great for tenants too. So Arnold absolutely does have fundamentals. Does that mean it's a great place to invest? No, I'll let you make that assessment. That's 30 seconds worth of research. But what I would say after 30 seconds is tick. There's definitely a case for some strong fundamentals here and a rental demand.
That's it. And it's those same fundamentals that power both rental demand and the potential for capital growth. Because broadly, it's the same factors that determine whether a renter or an owner-occupier wants to live in an area. It's to do with transport, it's to do with employment, it's to do with leisure. Those areas are not necessarily identical. There are areas that are geared more towards rental and areas that are geared more towards capital growth. But generally, if you find those fundamentals, that's the key to unlocking both the all-important rental demand back and giving yourself potential for growth as well.
So, Stephen, you've been very lucky there. 2 questions. But let's get back next week to our impartiality, our neutral stance. We are the Switzerland of podcasts normally. So next week we got Tracy, who's got 6 questions, and she's from Liverpool.
Hang on a minute.
Okay, maybe we haven't. Next week we'll have 2 guests with 2 questions, and that'll be next Tuesday, where we are every week for Ask Rob and Rob. And remember, on Thursday we are back with the main event, the Property Podcast. So until then, take care everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.